with Mirror now. Thank you for staying with us. The entire controversy of whether or not the Gandhis, specifically Rajiv Gandhi, used the Navy and the Navy ship as a taxi, INS Viraat. The controversy now being raked up by the Prime Minister has now taken new life. Joining me on the show at this point, Admiral L Ramdas, former Navy Chief, who has put out a statement at this point, and it's a very clear statement. Admiral Ramdas, good evening and thank you for joining us. I appreciate your time. You've said very clearly that there were no parties on board. The question that perhaps is worrying most people this evening is whether or not there were foreigners on board, or if Rajiv Gandhi came on board the INS Viraat with an entourage. What is your first response, Admiral Ramdas, to this entire controversy? Do you think politics is now entering spaces that they shouldn't enter?
I fully feel that way, and we have about 450 plus veterans who have signed, who have endorsed a plea made to the president that, you know, we please keep the politics away from our military, and by that I mean the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, because, you know, we don't belong to any civilian agency. We belong to the country. And I think this is a thing which we are sworn to the Constitution of India, and the president is the supreme head of the country and also the supreme commander of the armed forces. And that is the primary reason why they've made the president the supreme commander of the armed forces and not anybody else. So the fear of politicization was what I had in mind. I wrote to the Chief Election Commissioner even before the elections were announced, the date was announced, and I had said, please don't allow this to happen. Don't politicize the military by any political party. No party's names were mentioned. And so he issued a notice. And one hopes, as one had hoped, that that would be honored. Unfortunately, this has been repeatedly broken by various authorities who should know better.
Admiral Ramdas, the language that's being used for this particular case.
I think I've...
Yes, the Navy being used, the Navy ship being used as a taxi. Do you believe the language perhaps is offensive to the officers? To even suggest that the Navy would allow itself to be used as a taxi?
You see, what baffles me is an event which is supposed to have taken place 32 years ago suddenly surfaces at Ramlila grounds yesterday or day before, I can't now recall exactly, but this is something which itself is something quizzical. Next, naturally everybody or many people in the Navy, certainly I am, we are angered by this kind of statements being made in public about Navy being a taxi service. Surely we are not immigrants from other states to run the Navy of the country. We've got enough and more things to do and be professional. And I find this very, very hurtful, should have been avoided and could have been avoided. And I feel that we in the Navy are very saddened by this remark.
Admiral Ramdas, for the benefit of our viewers who are civilians, is it unusual for the Prime Minister, for any Prime Minister, to come on board a Navy ship? Was it customary? Have other Prime Ministers come on board the ship in the past, in your experience when you were with the fleet? Could you tell us if this is unusual?
Not at all. If you're on official duty, after all, our prime ministers and defense ministers have been going to forward areas, Siachen, this, that, and the other. They take flights in Air Force planes within the country, all officially for official purposes. And so was Rajiv Gandhi, the late Prime Minister. He was chief guest and man to give away prizes at one of these national athletic events or something in Trivandrum. And then we took him, and he had to attend and chair Island Development Authority body, and it swings from Lakshadweep Islands on the one side and one time of the year, and alternate years it's about Andaman and Nicobar Islands. You know, we are a country with a vast space of sea between our island territories and ourselves, and all of which are responsibilities of the Navy. I mean, no private boat was available for the Prime Minister to waste so much time. So he went with the fleet, which was already exercising on the Western Front, and this is something which they have done. I mean, we have been doing this regularly. I mean, there's nothing we don't know. And if it coincides with something like this, and he has taken pains, his office has taken pains to find out and coordinate with the Navy, and the Chief of the Naval Staff at the time, unfortunately is no more, is Admiral Nath Karni, my predecessor, and these are things which keep happening. It is nothing new. But on official duty, a Prime Minister is most certainly allowed to come and use the aeroplanes, the helicopters, and his spouse. And this is in government orders permanently for the RM and the Raksha Mantri. I mean, you see plenty of photographs these days of various people, I shan't name them, but they go from A to B, B to C. I mean, no questions are raised. But I'm absolutely aghast that this is coming up 32 years after the event, and that too for a man who's no more. I think this is not fair and not correct.
Admiral Ramdas, the question that has been asked is about him having come on board with an entourage, not just his spouse, and the entourage having also members of foreign nationality. To your memory, was there anyone on board?
Faye, forget about memory. I can tell you here and now. This I remember very well. We had nobody except the Prime Minister and his spouse. Nobody else. And for at least what I have seen and been interacting with, because I, as the C&C of the Southern Command, was asked by my colleague, Admiral Jain, to say that I should look after the Prime Minister when he's visiting the islands, because the islands came in my domain. So, as my responsibility, so I was escorting him, period. That's all.
Admiral Ramdas,
so there was no foreigner at all. But if any may I just say something?
Please.
If any foreigner wants to come and visit any part of my country, I mean, they can make their arrangements and go. I mean, the Navy is not kept as an information addressee, you know. We don't know who's coming, who's going. I don't know. Truly.
Admiral, the article that was written by India Today many years ago, actually, that's now been raked up and doing the rounds, talks about a very elaborate holiday plan. It talks about Rahul Gandhi with his friends and Priyanka Gandhi with her friends, and the Bachchans and Italians from Sonia Gandhi's family who were all there and who all used the Navy's hospitality. What's your response to this article?
To be very honest, I haven't gone through the entire article, but I can glean what Miss Anita
Pratap
wanted to say or convey, and even then the same thing was poo-pooed by the captains involved and the people involved at the time. And it happened well after my time in any case, so I wouldn't be truly in a position to tell you what she has written or what she hasn't written. And all these things are being now taken out of the archives. I don't know what is the purpose behind all this.
Well, the purpose...
Because this was told rubbish at that time. I've been told this by Admiral Prakash, I think, in one of the emails to me. Sorry, Admiral Pasricha, I beg your pardon.
Yes.
Admiral Pasricha said that this India Today came many years back, sir, and this is what it is. Well, I'm only repeating what he said.
Well, Admiral, you were Flag Officer Commanding in Chief Southern Naval Command based in Cochin at the time, and I'm just going to put that photograph up on the screen as well. The photograph of you dining alongside the then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. There's also an accusation or a suggestion that there were a lot of parties on board your ship. What's your response to that? Again, for civilians, are there a lot of parties on board a warship?
Yeah. No, I will tell you. No, we are not dancing toys, you know. But basically, for the benefit of my civilian friends who perhaps don't know how badly behaved we are on board, the thing is that at the time, this is absolutely utter rubbish, because we had, for the Prime Minister of the day, there was a Bada Khana which was followed by a speech which he made to the ship's company of Virat. Then I gave him, hosted a dinner for him and the commanding officers with the officers of the wardroom of INS Viraat. So, and by the way, wardroom is what you call a dining hall or a mess or whatever it is.
Yes.
In civilian language. But a wardroom is where our officers eat, and so I hosted that for the officers of Virat and the Prime Minister and the commanding officers who were in company. And I have sent a picture of myself with the Prime Minister on my right, because that is always the system. We put the chief guest immediately on our right, and then on his right is Captain Madanjeet Singh, who was commanding Ganga at the time. And he later, as I mentioned to you, became the commander-in-chief here in Bombay. And so I think this business of dancing parties at sea, good heavens no, not on.
Well, obviously not on your watch, Admiral Ramdas. Many thanks for joining us here on Mirror Now. Is there a parting note you want to leave to politicians who are breaking in the? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Faye, I want to just if you give me a few seconds. You know, the Navy is the silent service. We are not seen or heard as quickly and as easily as, say, perhaps our Army colleagues are or Air Force colleagues are. But one thing I want to assure you,
yes, and
through you, the viewers, that we have always been a silent service. We do our job. We are very proud of our professionalism. We move from one generation to the other. This is a part of life, and we have to do it. And right now, there's a lot of focus on the Navy and Asia Pacific and this and that. I mean, this is bound to happen. Change happens. But that doesn't mean we forget our traditions. One of the famous quotes by Admiral Sir Jackie Fisher, I know he's an Englishman and therefore they will not believe him, but I do. And he said, it takes 300 years to build a tradition, and it takes 3 minutes to break it. So with those words, I'll tell my civilian friends, we have yet another at least 230 years to go before we can solidify some of our essential features of our professional Navy. Thank you.
And finally, quick question, Admiral. The statement about the Navy being used as a taxi service, you did talk about how a lot of your retired colleagues and friends are upset and hurt by it, but will it affect the morale of those in the service who are currently serving?
You know, I have a very good story about this. I won't take long. Anybody who's in service today is bound to become an ex-serviceman a few years hence. So let us never forget that we are one family, and so we are all affected. This is not a good idea to do things like this, which will only spoil the fine traditions of our armed forces of being listeners and active members of 70 years of loyal service to this country. And today, somebody is trying to make it a private, we have privatized many things. My only request is, please don't privatize the armed forces. We have a job to do for the country,
Yes.
and we are doing it.
Are you likely?
And we will always do it. We'll always do it now or in the future.
Are you likely to write, or are you planning to write
Yeah.
to the election commissioner or the election commission again, Admiral?
Oh, look here, I have written to the Election Commission. We have sent a long list of over 450 veterans who have written to the President of India. They don't even answer these days or acknowledge that they've got a mail, except I have a speed post acknowledgement from the Rashtrapati Bhavan. Now, our Supreme Commander is the President, and we write to him, and we hope he'll do something. But I know very well what the answer will be. So, be it. As people in the country, we must understand that some of the constraints that the military is subjected to, and they have nothing to fear, because the military has always been and will always be loyal to the country, and the country is governed by its constitution, and we owe allegiance to the constitution. Period. No more.
Admiral Ramdas, many thanks for giving us your time. I really appreciate your time and your patience answering all of our questions. I'm sure our audience also appreciates the clarifications you've given us this evening. Admiral Ramdas, former Chief of the Navy, being kind enough to answer our questions, and perhaps also from his point of view, put to rest the questions that have been raised against the Navy at least. Quick break here on Mirror Now. We'll come back with Nation Now on the other side.